In the wilderness, people are faced with two options: facing death or surviving to tell the tale. These are their stories. All right, so tonight we're going to be hearing the story. Have you guys ever heard of Jerry Freeman? I doubt you have.
Nope.
I'd be surprised if you had. So this is actually kind of a weird wilderness tale. So you guys have heard of Area 51 before, right?
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah, everyone, for the few of you who may not have, Area 51 is a military base based outside in Nevada, outside of Las Vegas, that covers a huge chunk of the Nevada desert. And there's been quite a few reports and, mystery surrounding the whole base and its history, and a lot of, UFO conspiracies. That's one of the main headquarters that people, talk about when in the UFO community is, shit that goes on in Area 51. A lot of people believe that there are alien spacecraft in there that they're analyzing and, stuff like that. So he actually contacted the Las Vegas newspaper before he went in to, kind of as a third party to tell his story. A lot of times people do this to verify that it actually happened. So he was in contact with reporters while he was doing this and stuff. And they can verify that this happened through pictures and stuff. But cool. He wrote an article for the Las Vegas Sun, which is the main paper here. So as the full moon rose on an April night, Jerry Freeman picked up his backpack and headed into a desolate and forbidding landscape. Driven by an obsession about an episode in American pioneer history and the stubbornness of the Air Force, the 55-year-old archaeologist and adventurer began an unauthorized 7-day, 100-mile trek through the Nevada test site into highly restricted Air Force property called Area 51. His objective: to find an inscription made in 1849 by a member of a lost and desperate wagon train that gave Death Valley its name. Also, Freeman wanted to see Papoose Dry Lake, which is the last place where this group of would-be gold diggers camped together before splintering off. His problem was that the dry lake in the canyon that is thought to contain the inscription are deep inside one of the nation's most restricted military bases. Freeman's subsequent adventure, described in his own words in a 5-part serial that begins today in the Sun, took him through a surreal landscape that included eerie installations, ominous warning signs, a large ship stranded in the desert, and seemingly endless miles of rock and scrub brush. The trek also put him through several heart-stopping close encounters with security, a nerve-wracking moonlight tiptoe across a test site, potential crater area, an interview with a surly rattlesnake, and a desperate, dry-mouthed, all-night forced march in search of water. For his troubles, Freeman got a good sunburn and a look at Papoose Dry Lake and Nye Canyon, and the discovery of an ox shoe likely left behind by the wagon train. But he did not find the inscription. By the time Freeman got to Nye Canyon, where the etching is believed to be located, he was almost out of water, and he only had 1 day to search. Freeman knew before he started that the odds were against success and that he stood a good chance of being arrested, but the lure of finding that inscription and seeing the route was too strong. "The siren song is deafening," he said in an interview with the Las Vegas Sun on the afternoon before he set out. "I would be the only individual to see all 7 inscriptions from this wagon train. I've seen so much of their trail. I've seen everywhere they went except for this stretch right here. I am smitten by the forbidden fruit." Late last year, Freeman led a group of 5 on a 32-day, 330-mile trek that followed the exact route followed by these so-called 49ers. Those impatient pioneers in November 1849 turned off the well-traveled Spanish Trail near what is now Enterprise, Utah. Do you know where that is, Scout?
No, I don't think so.
No? I have no idea where it is. And they headed southwest in hopes of finding a shortcut to the California gold fields. Instead, their unfortunate decision brought them 7 weeks of misery, 4 deaths, and the dubious honor of naming Death Valley. Freeman's group had the advantage of modern equipment, knowledge of water supplies, and a supply truck. But unlike the Lost 49ers, Freeman had to deal with the Air Force. The proposed trek was well received by the National Park Service and the Bureau of Land Management. In addition, Freeman got the Nevada Department of Energy to agree to supervise visits to areas of the test site that could have been on the Lost 49ers route. The Air Force, however, ignored all of his efforts and his supporters to gain access to the military base. There are 7 inscriptions mentioned in the journals of the Lost 49ers, and in early last November trek, Freeman discovered the previously unknown location for one of them. The team also found an encampment containing artifacts that were likely left by the unfortunate pioneers.
So he did find one?
So basically what they're saying is he's been following the journey that these people took west, and he was able to follow all of their encampment and inscriptions they had made along the way, and on
except
rocks
for this
or whatever.
stretch.
Yeah, except for this one segment that was in Area 51, which he believes is where they got lost and ended up dying.
Right.
After the group trek ended in December, the last inscription and the Air Force not replying kept eating at Freeman. When you start a project, you hope to bring it to a conclusion, Freeman said. If it leaves gaps, you don't feel fulfilled. Besides, he said, the Air Force treated me and my entire crew with disdain. This is part of our American heritage, and I believe that I have a right to see it, he said. Freeman came to the Las Vegas Sun because he wanted a neutral party that he trusted to know when and why he was going in. I'm no Rambo, he said before his journey. I have no death wish here. I'm a middle-of-the-road American guy. I'm not one who protests. I pay my taxes, and I've never been arrested. I want the Air Force to know there's nothing sinister about what I'm doing. I'm not interested in the military or technology. I'm interested purely in the history and culture of that site and this artifact. I'm an archaeologist. That's it. Freeman was apprehensive about tales of people venturing into Area 51 to be never seen again. He would take his cell phone with him to call in and leave coded messages with his condition and his whereabouts. If he saw that he was about to be arrested, he would call immediately to make sure that somebody outside knew what was happening. Yeah, it's kind of scary to think, you get caught in Area 51, it's such a secret place, if somebody outside doesn't know that you're there and what's going on, you could literally disappear forever. As he left the office, Freeman still wasn't sure if he would attempt the trek. My wife is totally against this, he said. Any prudent individual would tell me not to do it. But, he admitted, his sense of adventure pulled him towards it. Nobody's been in that canyon and looked in it for over 50 years, and I could find that inscription. I mean, that is really enticing.
That is cool, yeah.
As an archaeologist, especially, I'm sure. As an experienced backwoodsman, he traveled light, carrying no sleeping bag or tent, and relying solely on his clothes and an emergency blanket. Although he had planned to call every day, he only left 2 messages during his trip in, and there was nothing after that.
Man.
On Monday, April 28th, Freeman's wife, Donna, said her husband wasn't home yet, and his brother, Doyle Freeman, had said Jerry was running a day behind. I finally made contact with Jerry Freeman the following day. Freeman related highlights of his trek, many of which he called heart-stopping. It was high adventure, he said. I'm just lucky to be alive. Because he hadn't found the inscription, Freeman wasn't sure that he actually wanted to go public with this story. He wasn't sure it was worth the legal risk. It was agreed to hold on any story until he told us that he was ready. 2 months later, after consultations with friends and families, he was ready. He wanted to go public and to bring recognition to those lost 49ers, particularly the 4 pioneer women, the unsung heroines who were on that wagon train. Since his group trek last year, Freeman said he sent story proposals about the lost 49ers to dozens of magazines, but sparked no interest. I feel we have shortchanged historically that particular group of pioneers, he said. They suffered through the Great Basin as nobody else had before. Now it's occupied by government agencies that don't even care. They don't care about inscriptions or these pioneers. Freeman recognized there would be more interest in this story now that it revolves around Area 51. If that works, he said, that's a good thing. Whether Freeman crossed into the Air Force's fabled Area 51 is questionable. Although the Air Force recently acknowledged it has a facility in Groom Dry Lake, it refuses to comment any further on the base, much less to define the boundaries. But Area 51 buffs from studying government maps have a pretty clear idea of where it's located. According to Glenn Campbell, the reigning civilian expert on secret base and UFO phenomena, the Area 51 is a 60 square mile tract that encompasses most of Groom Dry Lake. The base is snuggled up against the northeast edges of a mountain which stands between Groom and Papoose Dry Lakes, which is where Freeman was headed. In his account and in subsequent interviews, Freeman talked of climbing a ridge above Nye Canyon and looking down upon Papoose Dry Lake, which is just south of the mountain. Many UFO buffs, Freeman is not one of them, believe that a secret hangar containing captured alien spacecraft lies beneath Papoose Lake. During the day, I couldn't see anything, Freeman said of his views of Papoose, but at night, it was a different story. Freeman saw tons of lights. One appeared to be a security vehicle that was moving around. Another, however, was stationary and appeared to get larger and smaller, as would a hangar door when it opened and closed. But that's purely conjecture on my part. From that distance, I really couldn't tell what it was. Freeman thought he was looking into Area 51, but Campbell, who has written a book about the base, said the archaeologist was still about 10 to 15 miles south of the base, which was hidden from his line of sight by a mountain. Freeman, however, counters that Campbell is working from old maps and does not know what the Air Force considers to be the exact boundaries of the super-secret base. In any case, Freeman said that he wasn't there to see Groom Lake or Area 51. The 49ers were never at Groom Lake, he said. They were at Papoose. Freeman still hopes the Air Force will allow some historian, and he realizes that he'll likely be blackballed, to go into Nye Canyon and document this last inscription someday. I don't think the general public should be allowed to go in there when they want to, Freeman said, but for a legitimate educational purpose, I think we should be allowed to document it. I don't see how it would endanger national security to do that. We do live in a time of relative peace. We're not at war, and I think the Air Force needs to lighten up. Freeman also hopes to rekindle interest in pioneer history. So much of our history has lost its relevance to our young people, he said. They have no conception what these pioneers went through. Perhaps me going in there will spark their interest once again. And that is the story of Jerry Freeman.
Interesting.
Venturing solo into Area 51 to go try to find this inscription from these pioneers that people have never been able to find.
Really cool.
I found that a really interesting story, just because, like, you know, it's the only Area 51 related story I've ever heard that really doesn't have anything to do with the military or aliens. Like, his intent was totally separate from those two things.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Right.
yeah. So I think that's an interesting, like, wilderness tale, because, you know, he ventured out into the Nevada wilderness, and he also, like, kind of, it's an especially weird wilderness in the sense that we don't even know what's there because it's a military base. Like, there's so much secrecy surrounding it. Kind of makes it, like, super wilderness. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
Extra wilderness.
yeah.